Called to order the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of East Ridge, February 10th, 2022, 6 p.m. I'd like to ask Ezekiel Alavio, the Hispanic pastor with Action Church, if he'll come forward, lead us in our invocation and our pledge, if everyone will stand.
Let's just pray. Father, we just come to you first to give you thanks. Primeramente venimos a darte gracias. We just come to you that you help us that you guide this meeting, Señor, que tú dirijas esta reunión, Padre amado, que tú tomes todo el control, that you take the control of all. Father, I ask you that you are here in this place, that you are here in the midst of us, que tú estés, Señor, en medio de nosotros, Padre amado. En tu nombre oramos, in your name we pray, amen and amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and the republic for which stands.
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Roll call, Ms. Middleton.
Mayor Williams.
Here.
Vice Mayor Chauncey.
Here.
Councilmember Cagle.
Here.
Councilmember Helton.
Here.
Councilmember Witt.
Here.
City Manager Dorsey.
Here.
City Attorney Litchford.
Here.
All right, underneath our consent agenda, I assume everyone's had an opportunity to review the minutes from the January 27th, 2022 council meeting and the November 2021 financial report. I'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Vice Mayor Chauncey and a second by Councilmember Helton. Do we have any discussion, corrections? See none, roll call, Ms. Middleton.
Vice Mayor Chauncey.
Yes.
Councilmember Cagle.
Yes.
Councilmember Helton.
Yes.
Councilmember Witt.
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Yes. We'll move to communication of citizens. This is an opportunity for any citizen, business owner to come forward and address the council with any questions, concerns, accolades. I will mention we do have a couple zoning ordinances on the agenda tonight. The public hearing for that will be at the second reading at the next meeting. So there will not be an opportunity prior to the first reading of these ordinances, but if someone would like to come forward during the communication of citizens at this meeting, that would be the time to do it. We have two that have signed in. Carter Day, he'll come forward. For the record, if you would please state your name and address.
My name is Carter Day. I live at 1906 Brigmore. And my question is, I called and asked about short-term rental for my property, and they said it was zoned R1, if I'm stating that correctly. And I just wanted to know what gives it an R1 zoning.
So in the city, there's been a land use plan that's been adopted by the city some prior time when we had the zoning ordinance adopted. At that time, every property was given a designation several years ago. And this is probably, is it a single-family residential property?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that's why it got a designation of R1 zoning on that property sometime prior, whenever the zoning ordinance was adopted.
Okay, is there any changing of that going to happen anytime soon, or will it always remain R1?
You have the right to submit for our zone change if you'd
Okay.
like to. Mr. Howell, who's not here tonight, but Mr. Ritchie could get you in touch, or at least if you want to come next week, Mr. Howell will be back. If you come to the front window right there, talk with him and he can tell you the process to go through a zoning change to try for the whatever the purposes of the zoning change.
Okay.
And he can walk you through that.
Well, I understand that on a R1, there's no short-term rental, but there is long-term. I don't know what they consider long-term.
30 days or more.
30 days or more. Okay. All right. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next one on the sheet is David Tyler. Sir, if you'll come forward, state your name and your address for the record.
I'm David Tyler. I live at 4701 Fountain Avenue. This is in regards to the rezoning of the Budgetel. First off, thank you, Mayor and Council, for letting me come up here and speak. I'd also like to thank Amish Patel for answering my numerous questions at the public hearing. And I applaud the owners for their willingness to engage with the community on this issue. I attended the Planning Commission meetings, the public hearings, and the City Council meeting where this rezoning was tabled by the Council. After hearing Mr. Patel's proposal, I have a few concerns, but first I would like to address concerns brought forth by Mr. Patel himself. In his presentation to the City Council, Mr. Patel remarked, quote, "With everything new around us, we feel like we are outdated," end quote. And, quote, "The low rates are one of the things attracting the current residents," end quote. However, the current zoning does not prevent them from renovating this property or raising their rates to address those concerns. One phrase Mr. Patel used during the public hearing was better class of clientele. I believe what is being proposed by them could have the effect of improving their clientele. But, once again, the current zoning is not preventing Mr. Patel from seeking out a better class of clientele. As discussed in this public hearing at the community center, they do not currently adhere to city regulations and allow people to stay beyond the 120 consecutive day limit, and I learned that one resident had lived there for 3 consecutive years. It is clear that improved operating standards and complying with city ordinances will do more to improve their clientele than rezoning will. As for my concerns, I'd like to return to the topic of renovation of the property. Like I said before, nothing under their current zoning is preventing them from remodeling this property or improving their clientele. However, when I asked Mr. Patel at the hearing if the owners would still be interested in renovating the Budgetel, even if the property was not rezoned to R3, he answered no. In my opinion, if the renovation of the property and improving the clientele were his primary goal, then this renovation would happen no matter how the council voted. As I see it, the main benefits for Mr. Patel in rezoning this property is that it would allow the Budgetel to be permanently exempt from city regulations regarding extended stay business models. It will exempt them from paying the hotel motel tax and allow them to turn the Budgetel into Section 8 housing, thus guaranteeing their bottom line for years to come. If they are not willing to do what it takes to improve their situation under the current zoning, how are we as citizens to believe they will make good on their promise if it's rezoned to R3? Another concern is the border region. When the Planning Commission voted against this rezoning in September, Commission member Tuggle stated that rezoning would remove this property from consideration of the border region money. This property is in a prime location, and the increased revenues to the city through the border region would be the most ideal situation for the citizens of East Ridge and the city coffers. Lastly, I believe the owners of this property have not been ideal corporate citizens of East Ridge. In March of last year, the management of the Budgetel worked with the city of Chattanooga to lease 100 rooms to house some of Chattanooga's homeless. When I asked Mr. Patel about this, he told me that he believed this was an act of kindness, and he was surprised by the blowback that he witnessed. I explained to Mr. Patel that if it was an act of kindness, it was an act of kindness on behalf of Chattanooga and a burden to the city of East Ridge and its staff. I believe that his shock is due to the fact that he is from Atlanta and unaware of the history of Chattanooga pushing its problems into East Ridge. As stated previously, they are not in compliance with the city's ordinance regarding extended stay business models. Continuing to operate in this manner, especially after being made aware of their noncompliance, tells me they would rather operate in bad faith rather than improve their operations. When it was reported by local news outlets that the Budgetel had infestations of multiple pests and unsafe, quote, dangerous hazards, unquote, The management of the Budgetel was less than cooperative with the codes department and required the city to obtain a warrant. In conclusion, I am opposed to the rezoning of this property. Me and many other citizens would like to see more done under the current zoning to improve this property, such as renovation, complying with current regulations, and understanding that if they wish to be a part of the East Ridge community, they should start acting like good corporate citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's all that we had that is signed in. If there's anyone else who would like to come forward from the audience, now is your time. You have 5 minutes. I see no one else. We'll move to communications from council members. I'll start here with Vice Mayor Chauncey.
I have nothing, Mayor.
Councilmember Cagle.
I have nothing.
Councilmember Hilton. Councilmember Witt.
Nothing.
All right, I have a few things normally. First, let me mention there was no January milestone employee awards for this past month. Secondly, I always want to talk about the great things that are going on in our great library. So, February the 28th, there is Teen Art Contest. It's actually from the 1st to the 28th. It's ages 12 to 18. Contact them for information about the art. Forms can be picked up at the library. There's a $25 cash prize award for the first prize winner. Then on March the 2nd, happy birthday, Dr. Seuss. So it's a celebration. Drop in from 3 to 5 for refreshments and fun. Cat in the Hat and his friends will be there. So the kids will love to come and do that. It's a free event and no registration is required. Then on March the 8th, there's a Spice Club. So it's the second Tuesday of each month, beginning March the 8th. They're doing recipes for March recipes. Going to be chicken wings. There's going to be kits that will be started up on March the 1st. You can do an in-person demonstration of this on the 8th at 2:30, or you can watch a live presentation on March the 8th at 7:30. So it sounds like a fun activity if you're into spicy cooking and food. The other things I'd like to bring up, we have been thinking of, with the numbers of COVID and everything seems to be trending down. I was going to ask the council's thoughts about removing the petitions. Okay, thumbs up. We will have the petitions removed by the next council meeting. The other thing is we're also thinking of going back to pre-COVID protocol for our meetings, which means we will not do a live feed during the meeting. However, it'll be recorded as it has always been and published out for the public to view within a 24, 48-hour period? Within 24. Okay. So that is and we're looking at that for beginning in the first meeting in March. Other than that, that's all that I have. So I will pass it over to City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few things. I want to start with the progress on the park and splash pad, which I assume some of you've noticed. We've been out there putting in some dirt to fill in some of the low spots and get it ready to put some seed down. We've also been working on the ADA compliance to put in ramps and to put in the correct parking spots for that. And we're, like I said, moving forward with that. We're waiting on I don't remember the name of the test, to check the compactness of the mulch, right? They've been backed up on that for a couple months trying to get them down here to do that so we can get our final TDEC approval on that. At that point, hopefully within a month or so, it'll be ready to open the park, the playground park. Splash pad, we've gone through all of our tests on that. We're installing the fence around that. And as I said, we're also putting in sidewalks, ADA sidewalks, to make sure that we have access to that as well. We'll announce a date for that as it starts to get warmer, probably in May, I'm hoping. It just all depends on if we can get everything put in place. Next, the dog park. If you've noticed, we've gone a little further along with that. We've got the fence up and the benches, thanks to Vice Mayor Chauncey. So we have those in place. We've got the water line run. Tonight we will be getting approval from the council to order the other pieces that go inside the park for the animals. So once we get that, we'll move forward. And of course, COVID is backing up the supply chain on that. That could be 8 weeks, 10 weeks, but as soon as we can, we plan on getting that installed and open. And I'll talk a little more with Vice Mayor Chauncey too, and the Parks Department to see if we may even want to, if the equipment's not here yet, go ahead and get it open for like a little dry run before we're able to install that. So we'll talk about that as well. Number 3, I'm going to talk about my police chief, Stan Allen. This Saturday, he will be in full uniform and taking the plunge into a nice big vat of water. It's all for charity. You want to talk about that for a minute, Stan?
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey. This is called the Polar Plunge for Special Olympics. It's to raise money for Special Olympics. I think everybody probably knows what Special Olympics does. They asked me to do this when we did the Tip a Cop event out on Gun Barrel Road to raise money for the Special Olympics as well. I originally set a goal of $750, which one city employee donated the entire $750. So I upped it to $1,000, and it's now there's been over $1,100 donated. So it's into a pool. It'll be held at Finley Stadium. Registration starts at 10 o'clock. They have a costume contest at 11. I don't anticipate winning that, and then the plunge is at 11:30. And I did tell the people if you raise the money, I'll do it. I'll do the plunge, and I will do it in full uniform.
Thank you.
And you can still donate.
Yes. Thank you, Chief. The next item, I had sent our sanitation supervisor over to the city of Chattanooga to check on the equipment and the trucks that they've been using for their leaf removal. As you all know, we've been having a few issues with a couple of our apparatus that we've been using. We are done on the south side, basically. We're all the way over on the west side there. And then this next week, we'll be starting back up on the Belvoir side and finishing that on the first pass. So Seminole, they were finishing that this week, and then back up to Belvoir and working west up there. Anyway, he went to Chattanooga to check out their leaf trucks and the automated trucks that they've been using for that. I discussed this a little bit with the mayor to talk about finding out, getting some specs from this, seeing if it's just something that's on one of the purchasing agreements that we may already have in place, and getting one of these to, because it's going to take 6 months just to get it. And the price is somewhere in the $250,000 range, but we will come back to you all with that, maybe at the next meeting or two, and I'll get more with Diane over there to double check the funds, and we should be able to, with our fund balance, either in sanitation or state street aid or a combination, be able to bring this to you all for approval to hopefully buy that and have that equipment in place when next year starts. Next, I mentioned this at our last meeting. We have our RFP out for the development of the Mcbrine site. We have a due date of February 24th on that, just to see what the developers may have as options or ideas of what we might be able to do with that site. So we're very, very interested to see what comes back from that. And that's on the 24th. And the last two things I need to ask, get some guidance from council on to move forward with. At the beginning of this week, I received an email and some phone calls from the United States Amateur Soccer Association about an event that they had planned in July here. They had talked to Derek Green with the Red Wolves, but he no longer works for the Red Wolves, and still trying to figure out who is in what capacity over there, just dealing with the amateur soccer that we have over there. But in the meantime, at the moment, we don't have a development agreement, a management agreement for those fields yet with the Red Wolves. We have been trying since the beginning of July to work through getting the agreement together. It's gone back and forth a couple times, but it's just not there yet. It's getting close, but it's not there yet. Anyway, they have their tournament for a whole week in July, and they were afraid that they were going to have to cancel their tournament because they've already got rooms booked, they've got hotels in place, they have over 30 teams already committed. They're hoping for 125 teams, and We're talking over 2,500 people, so we've been talking with them this week about this. They had been in touch, along with the representative for the Red Wolves, with Tim Morgan, who's over the Chattanooga Sports Committee, I think is what it's called. So he knows all about this. He has pledged us his support on this too, to help make sure this goes off. So with that, I need to go ahead and get the contract put under the City of East Ridge's name so we can move forward to make sure we are able to still keep this tournament. So the amount is $8,500, but it's within my purview to still go ahead and do, but I want to make the council aware of that I need to move forward with that, unless there's any objection to that. I plan on moving forward with that. The second item is, it's in, Mark, you might have to help me on this because you have little kids, deals with soccer shots, right? This is a program that, where they deal with, is it 2 to 5 year olds, I think? 2 to 5 year olds, just to teach them the basics of soccer, is basically all it is. This was also something that was being arranged originally by the Red Wolves, but since we don't have a management agreement with them yet, they came to us to look at this and figure out what they need to do, because their first date is February 26th. So they are planning, those first couple are free clinics that they're planning on doing. So we have talked to them about going ahead and get those started, but we have one on February 26th. One starts February 28th, one starts March 1st, and one starts March 2nd. So we need to be moving forward with that. We're getting into February and March, and we need to start planning the usage of these fields. So I just want to bring that to the council's attention, that both of those items, I'm going to have to move forward and get contracts put together for those. But with that, that's the end of my report.
Thank you, sir. All right, we'll move to item 8, old business, ordinance number 1155.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of East Ridge, Tennessee, to amend the fiscal year 2022 operating budget ordinance number 1147 for various expenditures in the general fund using fund balance.
That's not the right caption. Look at the ordinance. We changed that we had to change it at the last meeting.
Okay.
So the ordinance is.
Okay. You want me to read it from the? That's right. We did do that, didn't we? Okay. All right, I'll read. All right. Ordinance 1155, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of East Ridge, Tennessee, to amend the fiscal year 2022 operating budget, ordinance number 1147, by changing the revenues and expenditures of the general fund, grant fund, drug fund, economic development fund, solid waste fund, debt service fund, capital projects fund, and to create the stormwater improvement fund.
And I will say it wasn't the city attorney's fault. It was just brought over from the last agenda.
Okay, well, I knew that. But if, there have been no changes except for making the caption correct, if you have any questions. I didn't know if you want me to go over all those changes again or not.
We'll see if we get questions. I'll entertain a motion for ordinance number 1155.
I make a motion to approve ordinance number 1155.
Second.
A motion to approve by Councilmember Whitt and a second by Vice Mayor Chauncey. Do we have any questions? You do not have any. Roll call, Ms. Middleton.
Vice Mayor Chauncey,
Yes.
Councilmember Cagle,
Yes.
Councilmember Helton,
Yes.
Councilmember Witt,
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Yes. All right, we'll move to item A under new business, ordinance number 1152.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of East Ridge, Tennessee, to amend the zoning regulations and the zoning map of the City of East Ridge, Tennessee, so as to rezone the property located at 1410 North Mac Smith Road, tax map number 169L-L-002, from C1 Commercial District to R3 Residential Apartment District.
Thank you, sir. To recap this, the first reading was tabled on November the 11th. That also, there was a public hearing that occurred then, and we had some citizens come forward. During that, it was requested that there would be a public meeting, and the owners were gracious enough to conduct a public meeting on a night that it wasn't very, weather wasn't permitting very well. There was a chance of snow and ice, and it was very cold. But the public meeting did occur. There were several that attended, several of the council members, and some of the public did. And then from that, we had an invite to come visit some of their facilities in Rome. So myself and the city manager took a trip on the 11th down to visit that. So just giving a little background on that. So this was on the table, but then it was brought off the table on the 27th, which was the last council meeting, and set for first reading for tonight. So a little, just to update everyone on the progress and the history on this particular ordinance. So without all being said, I will entertain a motion for ordinance number 1152.
Motion to deny ordinance 1152.
Second.
We have a motion to deny by Vice Mayor Chauncey and a second by Councilmember Whitt. Do we have any discussion? I see none. Roll call, Ms. Middleton.
Vice Mayor Chauncey.
Yes.
Councilmember Cagle.
Yes.
Councilmember Helton.
No.
Councilmember Witt.
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Yes. Ordinance number 1152 denied. We'll move to item B, ordinance number 1156.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of East Ridge, Tennessee, to amend the zoning regulations and the zoning map of the City of East Ridge so as to rezone the properties located at 930 and 931 Hurst Street, 1000 and 1004 Floyd Residential Duplex District, Drive, 6517 McCall Road, and 1403 Mac Smith Road from R2 Residential Duplex District, C1 Commercial District, and O2 Hospital and Institution District to C4 Planned Commerce Center District.
Yes.
All right, ladies and members of the council, mayor, so this is the resolution here to have rezoning of properties that's on the north side of the property, the southern portion of the Red Wolves development. We've got Mr. Ritchie here. Mr. Howell could not be here today. We've got some family. So Mr. Ritchie and I have spoken and have looked over this to assist with Mr. Howell's not here to be able to provide. The purpose of this is to be able to allow for the complete project, as I understand it, to be brought in for the phase one of the development of the project. And so the respective properties that are identified here have their various zonings. You can see R2, except for the last one is O2 to C1, and that these would all be put into C4 Planned Commerce District.
That's correct.
Thank you, sirs. I'll entertain a motion for ordinance number 1156.
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Hilton and a second by Councilmember Whitt. Do we have any discussion? Yes, sir.
The property at 1403 Mac Smith Road, that is the senior living residence, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, is it in the border regions?
It is.
As residential, it's in the border region.
The zoning classification doesn't necessarily have anything to do with whether it sits in border region or not.
Well, that kind of confused me on Budget Tail, because somebody said that if we rezoned it down to that, would take it out of the border regions, so.
What it does, it would require somebody to come back if they were doing I don't want to speak on somebody else's case, but if you take it to residential and then you actually want to generate sales, in order to have that use, you would have to upzone it back to the commercial occupancy to be able to generate those sales and
So
just to make it's more of a use related than anything.
So is this 1403 Mac Smith going to be part of phase one?
It was part of our overall development, so as we incorporate,
And
yeah,
but is it going to be part of phase one?
it's part of phase one. It's part of our property that we
Of
own.
the 60 acres.
Do what?
It's part of the 60 acres.
It's actually in excess of the 60 acres, I believe.
Okay, so, okay.
Any other questions, council? See none. Roll call, Ms. Middleton.
Vice Mayor Chauncey.
Yes.
Councilmember Cagle.
Yes,
Councilmember Helton.
Yes.
Councilmember Witt.
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Yes. Ordinance 1156 approved. We'll move to item C, ordinance number 1157.
In ordinance to the City Council of the City of East Ridge, Tennessee, closing and abandoning a portion of the right-of-way located at the 900 block of Hurst Street, a portion of tax map numbers 169E-C-001, 169E-D-007, and 169E-D-007.01, as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions. Members of the council, mayor, this is, when you look at the map on here, this is just that northern section of really Hurst Street that really comes to a dead end already, and comes into a dead end of what will be the economic development project that you're seeing for the Red Wolves. And by abandoning the portion that's shown here on the map attached, you're simply just allowing a natural connection between Floyd Street and Hurst. It would now just be that natural curve right there. The remaining portion would be cut off, and then this allows for the development of what you just rezoned to naturally be integrated into the development. It would allow for the developer to provide buffers and protections there so that people don't continue to go right into the development because there won't be an access there for it. Mr. Custer, do you have anything to add?
No, I believe that's correct.
And let me, I'm sorry, I should have had you introduce yourself for the record on the previous one, so if
That's
you would
okay.
please this time. We all know you, but for the record.
Kenny Custer, Ace Engineering, 714 Cherry Street, representing Star Community Builders and Sterling Holdings. So just as Mr. Litchford said, that we own all the properties that surround that, and when we go back into plating and surveying, all that's going to do is clean those lines up. The first part was to get the rezoning accomplished, and the next part is to clean it up with just that plating process. Because like I say, that is a dead end right now. That dead end serves two properties that we currently own, which we don't anticipate that those structures remaining for the next, in the next 12 to 24 months maybe. So,
Thank you, sir. I'll entertain a motion of ordinance number 1157.
Motion to approve 1157.
Have a motion to approve by Vice Mayor Chauncey and a second by Councilmember Helton. Do we have any discussion? Yes, ma'am.
I want to make sure that we do keep our right-of-way, our city right-of-ways. When we rezone this, right?
During the survey process, that's when that would take place.
that's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? See none. Roll call, Ms. Middleton.
Vice Mayor Chauncey.
Yes.
Councilmember Cagle.
yes,
Councilmember Helton. Councilmember Witt.
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Yes.
We'll make sure we leave that survey a little wide on the right-of-way, just in case there's any drainage infrastructure needs to be installed.
Mayor, I apologize. Just after just a quick second, Charlie. On 1156, when they said buffer on this last one, it reminded me on the first one. I know that Michael Howe's not here tonight. Does Star Builders or Kenny and them need to get with you on any of the buffers for that one that were recommended? Or there may not need to be any the way it's arranged. I just remember you saying that the RPA stated that there might need to be some buffers or anything else. If not, that's fine.
It was a concern
and that's something they can
on the southern.
discuss.
That'll all come in with the permitting process.
Okay, thank you.
And just so with current zoning with C4 to a residential district, it's already required within our current zoning. If there's anything else that needs to be added, that's something that can be discussed. But there's a current landscape buffer that's required between residential and commercial anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Ordinance 1157 passed, first reading. We'll move to item D, ordinance number 1158.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of East Ridge, Tennessee, to amend the zoning regulations and the zoning map of the City of East Ridge, Tennessee, so as to rezone the property located at 495 Camp Jordan Parkway, tax map number 170I-A-037.09, from C1 Commercial District to O2 Hospital and Institution District. Members of the council and mayor, this is an application that was brought here. This, by rezoning, would allow for the development of an emergency medical operations to be placed right here that would be for purposes of obviously serving the city, but also you've got it located right outside Camp Jordan Park. You've got routinely, give or take, 1,000, 2,000 kids on a given weekend for particular team sports, and that doesn't include necessarily the non-team oriented organized sports. And so by having this hospital here, it does allow for emergency service to be located at a central part of the city. It allows for an extension of the Park Ridge, which is already on Spring Creek, to have an emergency unit right at Camp Jordan, easily accessed, but they've got to be able to operate it. They would have to rezone it, and so that's what the purpose of this request is for. I think you're looking at a 1.71 acre tract that is on the right side of Camp Jordan Parkway, and from at least from what we understand from RPA, it's something that they do recommend approval for because of what it's able to offer from the fact that you're going to have emergency service available right there at Camp Jordan. There was a question that we've had, you're moving something from border region out. This is where you're getting an actual emergency amenity, a hospital medical amenity to help supplement what seems to be, and it has been recognized as a deficiency here because of Camp Jordan and the overload that you have of kids there to have this hospital.
Thank you, sir. I'll entertain a motion for ordinance number 1158.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion approved by Vice Mayor Chauncey and a second by Councilmember Helton. Do we have any discussion? Yes, sir.
I'm under the understanding that by this being owned by the hospital, this 1.7 acres will be took off of the tax rolls.
No, the hospital,
Correct.
number one, the hospital is for profit. So if the hospital did own it, it would stay on the tax rolls or property tax rolls. But I believe it's being leased. I'm speaking for you, sorry. I believe it's being leased to the hospital. So it would stay on the tax rolls.
Staying on the tax roll, okay.
Same question that came up at planning.
Correct. Any other questions, council?
I would just like to say I appreciate y'all doing this. I think it's a really good thing for Camp Jordan.
We're excited about it. Ethan Wood, Exit 1, 115 Cedar Lane, Chattanooga, Tennessee. We're excited about it. We're hopeful that everybody can be excited about it, and it really plays well with everybody else in the community. One thing that I wanted to note, Mark, was that in the event that it is not...
Oh, that is right. Okay, you're right. I'm sorry. One of the things that we are doing here, and we've checked with RPA and MTS, so this is scheduled to be on a 15 to 20-year lease. The developers recognize the value of having this property for commercial use in the event that the hospital were to no longer be in operation there and it moves out. The property would revert back, and you can reserve the reverter back to C2 to allow for that commercial activity to resume naturally back into the development. Their hope, I understand the expectation is they're designing a hospital for multiple years. But the policies of HCA is 20-year lease is what they're doing. And so to accommodate the hospital while also recognizing the value of the property to naturally go back to the commercial, if the hospital is not going to be there, then it reverts back to commercial use for for border region retail revenue.
Mr. Wood, just real quick, could you tell us what is planning on going there? And it's not really a hospital though, is it? Is it more like the?
It's basically an emergency
room.
It's emergent care, and ultimately, I guess I would tell you to go look at. There's a similar facility on Lee Highway that they've already done. It's opened about a year ago. It looks awesome. It's not only is it going to look great, they're spending a ton of money at this location. So I mean, you'll continue to get the building permit fees and everything that go along with that. I think in the end it'll be something you'll be really proud of. It looks great. I think ultimately everybody will be excited about it, and it really works great. Probably it's not just with Camp Jordan, but with the freeway, it's good exposure for people stopping in right off the freeway and shopping hopefully at Chick-fil-A and Starbucks and everywhere else.
Yeah.
Care center affiliated with which hospital?
HCA.
CA?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a great asset and can benefit our citizens greatly.
I have a remark just because,
I was going to ask if we,
I want to reflect in the ordinance, and I did a poor job of, there'll be a section 2 when we come back. What was recommended and what was applied for with RPA was that the right of reverter be reserved to go back to C2. So we need to add a section 2 to what will be the ordinance passed, 1158, and I can correct that on the second reading, so it'll be there, but there should be a second section there that will provide for a reservation of reverter to C2 in the event that the hospital is no longer in operation at the location. So I want to make sure that's reflected in what we're having here. That was something they did submit to RPA, and RPA said, yes, that's fine. And so that's technically what the request was for.
because that's what I was going to ask, if we needed to amend this or would just let at the second reading it be.
I want to go ahead and be clean right now. I think, Councilman Chauncey, did you make the motion?
Yes.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, and so,
Draw my second.
all right, now, just to reflect, and I apologize, if you want it, the motion would be approve resolution, ordinance 1158 with provision that it also have the right of reverter to C2 in the event the hospital is no longer in operation.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 1158 with the right to revert to C2 if it's no longer ever a hospital.
Second.
Thank you. Let me ask a clarifying question. It states C1 in here. Is it going back to C1 or
I'm
C2?
sorry. It's C1. Some of it is
side
C2.
is C1. There is no rhyme or reason. In fact, Kenny and I discussed this probably 4 or 5 years ago. This side of the road is C1. The other side is C2. All we would ask is that in the event that it is no longer functioning as an emergent care facility, that it would revert back to C1, or we wouldn't have to come back before you guys.
Let's just
Clean that back up to
Well,
C1.
why don't we correct it? And that was my fault for leading you to C2. I could have read, it would revert back to C1.
I'll withdraw my motion.
Well, just correct it.
Okay, I'll just amend my motion that
Clarify.
clarify that we reserve the right to revert back to C1 if it never becomes a hospital again.
All right. Thank you. Any discussion? I see none. Roll call, Ms. Middleton.
Vice Mayor Chauncey,
Yes.
Councilmember Cagle,
Yes.
Councilmember Helton,
Yes.
Councilmember Witt,
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Yes. Ordinance 1158 passed first reading. We'll move to item E, ordinance number 1159.
An ordinance to amend Title IV of the East Ridge Municipal Code pertaining to municipal personnel.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll have Michelle Senegalio come up and discuss this for us.
Mayor, council, sorry. It's a big book.
Do you want to recognize her title?
Oh, Miss Senegalio is our Human Resources Manager.
Thank you for the record.
Thank you.
So I'm here tonight to talk about why we want to make a change with Title IV, basically replacing Title IV, or you could say moving out our personnel manual out of our codified ordinances and resolutions document, which is right here in front of you. This is the municipal code for the city of East Ridge, as up to date as it is, which isn't fully up to date, but it's awfully darn close. So you can get a good idea of kind of what we're talking about and talking about moving away from. This section in particular is Title IV. It contains 5 chapters. We're talking about moving all 5 of those chapters, or the content of all 5 of those chapters, into an external document, an HR manual, if you will. There are several reasons why I support the decision and think that this is what we should do. One of those reasons is the out-of-date terminology that's used, because those ordinances have been in place for a long time. Some of the out-of-date terminology would include, we refer to Social Security as old age insurance. In our policy that refers to educational reimbursement, there is no reflection of online options, which, as you all know, in the last few years has really blossomed and grown. In our travel reimbursement policy, we refer to a specific per diem rate that is long out of date. Throughout the document, we refer to permanent work schedules and permanent full-time employees, which basically gives an implied contract to an employee, so you never want to use the word permanent in a document like this. Our military leave policy is out-of-date terminology. It refers to a 15-day policy. It's actually 20. And instead of referring to a cell phone policy or usage of electronic equipment such as a cell phone, we have personal telephone calls and long-distance policy, which of course, as you know, is quite out-of-date, antiquated terminology. There are inaccuracies throughout. The occupational disability policy, the statement of when we begin payment is inaccurate. Where we reference slightly some non-discrimination against protected classes, we leave out several of the classes that have come about in the last 10 years. The Social Security policy exempts part-time employees, which is just flat out wrong. You can't exempt them from Social Security. And our leave time policies refer to comp time, compensation time, which, as you all know, no longer exists in the city of Eastridge. As a human resources professional, I'm aware, and most of you are probably aware, that there's best practice in place that talks about certain policies that really should be in any personnel manual. So those include an EAP policy, a social media policy, an electronic communications policy, a policy referring to all benefits, specifically who's eligible and when they become eligible, a records retention and access policy, an internet and computer usage policy, a dress code policy, and a weapons policy. None of those exist in Title IV. Additionally, to be regulatory compliant, the law requires that we have certain policies in place. The Family Medical Leave Act, we have to have a policy on that. We do have one in there. It's wrong because it's old. It hasn't been updated. We do not have an ADA policy in Title IV at all. We within administration have an ADA policy. I have an ADA policy in my office, but it is not part of the Human Resources policy or the Personnel Manual. We do not have an EEOC policy that is required by law. Like I said, we reference non-discrimination of certain classes throughout the document, but there needs to be a specific EEOC policy, and it has to be including all of the protected classes. In 2006 or 2007, the state of Tennessee mandated that all municipalities in the state of Tennessee had to have a code of ethics policy. We do have one in the city of Eastridge, but for whatever reason, it was codified into Title I, not into Title IV. So an employee looking to see our code of ethics policy will never find it in the personnel manual. We are required by the state of Tennessee to have a maternity and paternity policy, and that is not in Title IV. I don't know if we ever adopted one or not. There is a sexual harassment policy in Title IV, but not a workplace harassment, and as you know, there can be a lot of types of harassment in the workplace that aren't specific to sexual harassment. And to be compliant with the Fair Labor Standard Act, we really need to have our work period clearly defined so an employee can reference how their overtime is measured in any given pay period, and that is not defined at all in Title IV. So those are just some of the reasons why Title IV is not really working, is not really our best practice or regulatory compliant. Other reasons to replace it are it's cumbersome. It's not easy to update it because, remember, these are ordinances that need to be updated, and to replace them is obviously a really big deal and has to be gone through several processes to do that. If an employee right now today said, I want to see in Title IV, I want to look up this policy, that policy, there's very few ways that they can access and look at Title IV. One is if we're open in City Hall and administration, then go to the city recorder. Myself, obviously the city manager has it. In fact, this is his book. Other than that, their only way to see it is to go online to the MTAS website. That's the only place it exists for them. The narcotics policy in Title IV, in Chapter 2 of the Personnel Manual, is 17 pages of the 56-page document. Just to give you an idea, that's a third, or almost a third of the document is just the narcotics policy. Just to give you an idea of how, if somebody is looking through it to try and find a certain policy, what they would be dealing with. Our expectation is that our employees want to be compliant and want to exhibit certain behaviors, and we really can't ask that of them if we don't have an expectation of where they can find the document, or they have expectations to find it and simply can't find the document. Also, we want to be transparent about our policies. We want to, inform every employee anytime about their benefits, their protections, all of the things that are available to them in their employment, and answer questions so that they can make decisions on what they're going to do. And to be transparent, we really need a functioning document that's easily accessible and easy to update. Any questions so far? Then I'm going to introduce Betsy. So my coworker, Betsy, my colleague in the human resources world, is here from MTAS. This is Betsy Cunningham. You want to come and talk,
Yeah,
Betsy?
good evening. I'd just like to say a couple things. I work for MTAS. I've been there 2 years, and I'm your HR consultant. And what that means is I work with 113 cities throughout East Tennessee, and I help them with all things HR related when they reach out to me. It's interesting, as I'm sitting here listening to Michelle and reflecting on a conversation I had with Chris, this is not like many of our cities. I know you all are servants of the community, and you're thinking, why haven't we done this sooner? And I can't help but notice the slogan of Pioneer of Progress, and hear all the things I've already heard you talk about. But 2 years ago, when I first met Chris, my first meeting here, I was brand spanking new, and he said, we really need to do a better job of updating these things and communicating to our employees. Michelle did the same when she came on board. So I think the whole intent, as she said, is to become more transparent, to make sure our employees know what the policies, the guidelines are. Oftentimes, we have employees whose maybe their spouse in their home wants to know what the policies or practices are. I know I do that in my husband's case because he has no idea, particularly when it comes to benefits and leave and things like that. So I applaud you all as a city because, as I said, there are many that are in the same situation. It's hard to make changes, even when they're good. And I can't help but recognize it's just kind of ironic, the pioneer of progress, that you all are progressing that way. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and we'll be working alongside with Michelle and have with Chris to help with many of these policies.
I'd like to thank Betsy for being here as well, and thank Michelle for both of y'all for the hard work on this HR manual. It's basically the nuts and bolts of MTAS. It's basically an MTAS document where we tweak the parts to that we're more particular towards East Ridge. So I really do appreciate that. By this being a HR manual, it becomes more of a living, breathing document. As Michelle started to say, and we all know, to change an ordinance in Title IV or anywhere in that book, when you do their ordinance, it's approved by you all, and usually once a year, that book will be updated with whatever the new ordinances are. That's the only time. If they go online to MTAS right now, they're not going to find an updated ordinance, an updated whole municipal code book, because it's behind. MTAS is also right now working on, as I mentioned a while back, COVID sort of slowed it down. They're working on revamping that entire book to bring it up to date and keeping a lot of the same things in it, but to bring it to the council at some point for review, consideration, and to be able to go through that. So with that being a living, breathing document, the best thing about it is when there's something that needs to be changed or something that needs to be looked at, that would be brought in front of council. Council still controls the document. It will be brought in front of you all in the form of resolution to make the change, and then almost instantly that change can be disseminated to the employees, put into the document, and so they will always have an up-to-date, living, breathing document of how this works. The steps we have to do in order to be able to do this, you all had a copy put in your boxes on Monday, just to give you a chance to review it before next week. 2 weeks from now, excuse me. So with that being said, the 2 steps we have to do is we have to make the changes within Title IV to accommodate this, and that takes 2 readings, which basically, if you look at the ordinance here, it will remove that from Title IV, and it will change it to 2 paragraphs that basically say the city is now instituting a human resources manual. And then the next paragraph states that any changes to that HR manual must be done by a resolution approved by council. So today would just be the first reading. because we have to do 2 readings, to start that process to amend it. And then in 2 weeks, we'd have to have the second reading to talk about the process of amending Title IV. And then if that is approved by council, then the very next item, or the first resolution, would be to approve the Human Resources Manual.
So to add on to that, so this ordinance is not approving the HR manual.
No.
It is approving the transfer from Title IV to an HR manual. We still have 2 weeks to review the actual HR manual, provide input, suggestions, recommendations from council. You all should have a copy of this prior to the resolution in 2 weeks. Did I state that correctly? Okay. Yes, sir.
There's 2 things in here that I'd like to get clarified on. It is vehicle use policy, item H. Are all take-home vehicles going to be taxed, or just certain?
No,
Take
you want to
home.
answer the IRS states.
Sure.
Yeah.
Marked and unmarked law enforcement and fire vehicles are exempt from that policy. That's why at the very end of that sentence, it says, as permitted by IRS law or something to that effect. And actually, after the employees had access to that same draft that you're looking at right there earlier this week, I did hear from a couple of them that they wanted that clarified. And so
That's
since
the reason
that
why I'm
time, since that time, I've actually spelled it out more clearly. And when I update the drafts before 2 weeks from tonight, you'll see that it's clearer.
And do I understand that item J with the grievance procedure, we're no longer going to have a grievance procedure?
That's, yeah. And that is correct.
Yes, you won't have it in the format it is.
I'll ask this other question somewhere else.
Okay.
Like I said, you'll have an opportunity in 2 weeks when the manual actually comes. And if you do have an updated version, it'd be great if you could
Sure.
disseminate one to each one of the council members.
Maybe we'll put in yellow what has changed from this version
Sure.
to the, whatever small changes you make.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for ordinance number 1159.
I make a motion to approve ordinance number 1159.
Second.
Have a motion to approve by Councilmember Witt and a second by Vice Mayor Chauncey. Do we have any additional discussion?
I would like to commend all of the people that have worked on this, because I did read it last night, and I'm impressed with it. There's some changes they're making, but I'm very impressed with the hard work.
Done a lot of work on it.
Has.
Yeah, I second that. There's been a lot of work, a lot of late hours, a lot of effort. Thank you. See no other questions? Roll call, Ms. Middleton.
Vice Mayor Chauncey.
Yes.
Councilmember Cagle.
Yes.
Councilmember Helton. Councilmember Witt.
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Yes. Ordinance 1159 passed first reading. We'll move to item F, Resolution 3237.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of East Ridge, Tennessee, authorizing the city manager or his designee to purchase agility equipment for the dog park from Play and Park Structures, a Playcore company, through the Omnia Partners Purchasing Cooperative.
Thank you. Yes, as you know, I mentioned this during my city manager comments. This is the part of the dog park where after we've got the fences, the water run, we have the benches that are in there. Now it's time to order the equipment. So this is what I was talking about. The equipment comes out to $16,447. Then there's freight, and we're hoping that freight stays at that number, because hopefully it will, because that's what was quoted to us. But the way gas is going up and down, it may vary just a little bit. The total here is $19,725.34. That is just within the amount of budget that we have remaining, Ms. Qualls? Yes. Thank you. If there's any other questions, I made Alex Harrison come tonight, so if you have any questions, he will be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, sir.
Alex is with our Parks Department, excuse me, I'll make sure.
Just for the record, and I'm not sure if it's in the packet and distributed, and especially for the benefit of the people watching this now or later, can you give a little rundown of the items that we're actually purchasing, please?
Sure. You might be able to describe them a little better, but I can read them while you're coming up. Small ring jump, a crawl tunnel kit, a teeter-totter, King of the Hill, the ring jump, stepping paws, the Fido fountain, and then, of course, the installation. Cameron McAllister couldn't be here tonight. He had a dental or orthodontic appointment, and I got a text. He was still a little foggy from the gas from in front, but he wasn't able to get here in time to be here for the meeting tonight, so he apologizes.
So Alex Harrison, Parks and Recreation Department Facilities Admin. The small ring jump is a hoop that dogs can jump through. Crawl tunnel kits are a tube essentially that they can jump through. Teeter-totters is exactly what you're imagining from a child's playground perspective. King of the Hill is a A-frame ramp. Ring jump is this larger dog version of the small ring jump. Stepping paws would be elevated discs at different heights for them to run across. Fido fountains is a dog water fountain, and installation services.
And the crawl tunnel kit, there's 2 of them and there's 2 fountains, correct?
Correct.
Right. Thank you for the detail of that information. I'll entertain a motion for Resolution 3237.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion approved by Vice Mayor Chauncey and a second by Councilmember Whitt. Do we have any discussion?
Yeah, I got a couple questions, if I
Yes, sir.
may. The dog waste station, is that little,
So Hamilton County Water Quality Department donated 3 stations to us that are already installed.
oh, okay. Thank you for that. One last question. You said that we're towards the end of the budget. Is this, because I know we're taking this out of the $25,000 grant. And
Correct. I never say this is it, because there might be something that's forgotten or something that is needed at the very end, but this is very close to using most of the 25,000.
Okay, well, I guess going from 19 to 25, there's about five left, or was some?
After
No,
installation.
luckily I brought
Got the
I
cost
got
for you.
papers.
Okay.
Okay.
I just want to know if there, go ahead.
Well, of course, the benches were donated, but then there was a little left, and so the grant paid that amount, which was the freight for the benches, which was $922.82. Then we had to have Rain Man came in and ran the water lines. That was $1,334.35. We ordered trash cans
Okay.
for that. That was $1,354.50. So those were some of the things. So that left us with, at that point, $21,388.33. So of that, so after that's done, we'll have $1,662.99 for any other little surprises. And there's always something. But they've been
Forward to
really
it.
good stewards.
Exciting, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, council? I see none. Roll call, Ms. Middleton.
Vice Mayor Chauncey,
Yes.
Councilmember Cagle,
Yes.
Councilmember Helton,
Yes.
Councilmember Witt,
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Yes. Resolution 3237 approved. We'll move to item G, Resolution 3238.
A resolution of the City Council for the City of East Ridge, Tennessee, authorizing the mayor to submit a 2022 application for state partnership grant with the Tennessee Department of Finance and Administration and authorizing certain actions relating thereto. All right. Members of the council, Mayor, this is an opportunity for the city to you get one time a year, and the February 1st, you had Governor Lee announce his proposed budget through the Department of Finance and Administration. As part of that, there are no external partnership appropriations in that budget, but that's normal. Through the way that Governor Lee has done it, they do an online portal and they have a deadline. That deadline is tomorrow at noon, so tomorrow, February 11, at noon is the deadline to submit for an application for the grant. And this would be a direct appropriation grant from the governor's line item budget. This would not be city funds. It wouldn't be property taxes, local option. It's not sales tax. This is separate and apart from Board of Region because Board of Region is sales tax. This would be a grant issued to the city directly, an appropriation directly from the state. The triggering event of what triggered this was midway through January, I think, Mayor Williams got a call, and through the works of the developer over at the Red Wolf site, Sterling Holdings and Mr. Martino, they have they've got representation in Nashville that has assisted with them in trying to secure the ability to get funding on behalf of the state. What has kind of become known since that time is the state doesn't grant money directly to the developer. It goes through the city. And so we were talking with Nicole Watson, who is the representative for the city for legislation. She is assisting Mr. Martino in connection with the state side to secure funding. So the meeting that Mayor Williams had, what came out of that is the idea that the city was the party that had to do the asking and the submission. And Ms. Watson told us sometime around February 1st, that website portal would become available so that we could submit it. Mr. Custer has been great to work with in connection with providing us on that online portal the information that we're going to submit in the event that the council approves the authority for the mayor to submit to that application. It would be a grant that's issued from the state to the city and then administered through the IDB to help assist with certain costs for the development over at the Red Wolves development. That is a 60-acre, 60, 80-ish, 100-acre tract, give or take, depending on which portions if they're going to be able to develop. In total, it's 100 acres. I don't know how much will be developed. But
that's correct.
But the idea is right now that development is in phase 1, which is projected right now to be around at total build out, I think 140 million at total build out. The developer at this point has indicated that the initial private development investment has been around 30 million or exceeds somewhere around 30 million. You've seen the stadium that you've seen up there. You've seen the Jumbotron. You've seen the lights. You've seen all the dirt. There's around 400,000 square yards of cubic compact dirt that has been brought in to bring this site into the developable condition. There's been no violations of any environmental, NEPA, or any of that nature. They've been able to address any sort of flooding, as we saw with respect to the McCall properties that we're seeing. So what we have here is the opportunity, but the city has to be the applicant to submit for the state direct appropriation funding. And as we've gotten in this, we've talked with Ms. Watson, the method would be, again, the proceeds running through the city to the IDB who would administer this in partnership with the developer. So there would be an agreement that would the city, the IDB, and the developer would reach that basically addresses how the method is going to be to get these funds, how it will be administered. We have talked, Ms. Qualls, I think, has even contacted the comptroller. There are bookkeeping requirements. This is anytime you have a state grant, the Department of Finance and Administration does promulgate various policies and procedures. Ms. Qualls and I both looked at them. She's been in consultation with the comptroller as to what those bookkeepings are. We would address the issues of bookkeeping. We will also have the potential that there would be auditing involved, but we've consulted with the developer and notified him of what those requirements will be. That way we all understand with the state grant that there are obligations each party has to undertake, because when the state gives money, what we've got here is a private development, which is fine, but it's got to be routed through a city. And so the city is going to do it, administered through the IDB. And again, these are separate from Board of Region revenue, but then they would go to help fund for the public infrastructure of phase 1. And by what I mean by public infrastructure, it's in the statute. If you look, we've got a provision in here. That is a defined term in the state statute. I'll just give you the Cliff Note versions are public infrastructure can consist of right-of-ways, sidewalks, utilities, parking garages, parking lots, the light post or lamp post on the parking lot, wastewater management, retention, I think I said utilities, powers. Those are all considered public improvements. At least that's how we interpret it under the statute. We have reached out to F&A to get a clarification, but it's our understanding that a public infrastructure improvement as defined by the statute, and I can give you that statute in just a second, 9-23-102-16. And that is a defined term. And so the idea is that this would help assist the development, because the overall development is give or take 60 acres for the economic development of it. This is phase one. And again, that does consist of the stadium, around 144 three-unit townhomes, a total of around 200 residential units. The stadium, plus around, I think, 50,000 square feet of commercial retail space that would be available in this phase one. So that's what the developer has provided to us. That is information that we will give to the state. If the council approves the application, Mr. Custer and I will go and we'll submit it to the portal. We've got the supporting information. I should say I got this information today. This is identifying what phase one is. Y'all have seen this, but I want to give this to you. That would be what is phase one. And then Mr. Custer provided here today, we've got what would be civil engineering renderings for the construction site of phase one, which again has on one page is what the projected, or at least renderings of what projected public infrastructure improvements will consist of in phase one. All right. Okay. These are what I have met with you all to go over here, Mayor. You've got those, and they got a hard copy. They are a little tough to read, but you've got, let me know, I've got the electronic version. So, okay. So these are the plans that were presented to us, and this is what we intend to submit to the state. Now, again, tomorrow is the deadline to submit the application. I have talked to Ms. Watson about it. She said, yes, tomorrow's the deadline, and that's sort of your placeholder. We will get this submitted timely. There's no guarantee we get the funds, but the purpose of this is we want to make sure that we secure the positioning of the city, because again, this is state funding. This would not be something that the city would come out of the cities. There's no match that's required that we know of. I guess they could put strings, but we've not been told there would be. This would be straight grant funding appropriation from the line item of Governor Lee's budget.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Mayor and Council, if I may, just to add on a few things that to Mark.
Kenny Custer.
Yeah, let me do that one more time. Kenny Custer, AC Engineering, 714 Cherry Street.
Thank you, sir.
So obviously, with the developer and the development, we're extremely excited about this opportunity. We've been doing work out here. I mean, most of you all were there back in 18, 19 when we're breaking ground on a dirt pile that really isn't even a dirt pile on the site, right? And then, less than a year later, we're playing our first game on a field in the city of East Ridge, which is far beyond what we thought it would be. And going into it, I believe we all knew, everybody that was working on this project at the time somewhat understood that the challenges associated with the site. Now, as we move forward into today, what a lot of people don't realize is the entire east end of the city's sewer runs through our site. So that, when you talk about infrastructure upgrades and facilities, there's several different sewer mains that actually run through our site, not once, but twice. Once to get through the site, to go to those screw pumps, to turn around and come right back. So that's obviously one large expense that we're going to incur. And being that you understand that when you get into the development, that there are going to be some things. And kind of to Mark's point, he was talking about some fill work that was done. It's actually about 1 billion pounds of fill that's on that site. And we had met with several developers about this site for years. It was the last great golden opportunity for development within the city, trying to capitalize on every funding opportunity that we could. So like I say, we're super excited about it. This opportunity came up, when it was brought up about Knoxville. Knoxville's obviously a little different because Knoxville's going to own the stadium, and they're going to write Knoxville's going to bond it and build it. Luckily, that's something that you all don't have to do. You don't have to bond or build it. And you don't have to worry about getting paid back or holding that bonding capacity. And for this, it's just a direct, as long as the matrix and the benchmarks are met according to what the state guidelines are, and as long as we meet those, then it should just roll through the IDB to help with the infrastructure costs. So it just further solidifies our partnership. I mean, I think we're all in this thing together. We're as successful as you are. Y'all are as successful as we are, and we're excited. I think the future, I said this when I had my very last meeting that I was here, that our future is extremely bright. And with this last large track that we have, I think, $140 million in phase one, and we're just talking about phase one. So you can imagine where we can be 5 to 6 years from now. So with that being said, thank you for your consideration of this. I know there's probably going to be some questions, but I think Mark did a very good job explaining that this is a state grant opportunity, and obviously it's competition. Knoxville was able to obtain this. Knoxville applied, went through the Sports Authority legislation and process, and did that with the city and the county, and was very successful at doing that. Once they were kind of granted that funds, they went back and started then doing some impact studies. We're just a touch different, just simply because we've already started, and we're already moving forward. And now, obviously, everybody's read the paper. The city of Chattanooga's wanting to do the same thing with the lookouts. And so the funding's there, hopefully, and we're hoping that we can be the recipient of it to make the gateway to Tennessee, which is the project, the best project that we can possibly have.
Thank you, sir. I'll entertain a motion for Resolution 3238.
Make a motion to approve resolution number 3238.
I'll second.
So a motion approved by Councilmember Hilton and a second by Vice Mayor Chauncey. Do we have any discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. Who actually owns the Gateway development?
The owner is Sterling Holdings, and the developer is Star Community Builders.
When I went to page 8 and it had A, B, and C where it's like the 50%, how do you clarify I didn't understand that very well. How do you clarify the payouts? If who pays this out? Who's working with Diane to tell us whether this is an approved cost or expenditure?
So it will be Star Community Builders is the entity that will actually be the ones providing all the upfront costs for the work. And then in turn, as long as the benchmarks that are set forth are made according to state guidelines, then the check will then be paid out of IDB, just like you do to Exit One Now or any other person that's out there. As long as those metrics are made and the documentation and accounting is done appropriately, then it will go back to Star Community Builders, not Sterling Holdings. Now, I did tell Mark that, Mark and I had this conversation. Sterling Holdings, as the property owner, can be on the development agreement. That's not a problem. We just want the clarification to be different on who the payback is, because it's two separate entities, and you can't put you can, but it makes it an accounting nightmare to put two separate entities on one check. I guess Diane could probably attest to that. So.
Okay. Do they approve the payout prior to us paying you, or do we pay you when you give us the receipts? And then if something comes back in the future and they deny that, who's liable for that?
We are. We have to follow all procedure. There's a 400-page booklet of what we have to follow, and we will have numerous accountants that work on this that will be solely, we already have two, at least, that work just directly on our site. I think Diana's had the privilege to meet at least one or two of them or have conversations with them because of Border Region.
I've talked to them on the phone.
Yes, and it will be, so it's by using the IDB, it's a similar method. It's actually a method that's already been used by the city in the past. Matter of fact, the payout matrix have been used in the past when the city did a $4 million issuance of city money. So it's the same type of method, but just it's a different funding mechanism.
You know Diane, and you know how she doesn't like findings.
Oh, I know.
We need to make sure that we have all of our T's crossed and our I's. Mark, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I think, okay, what we are doing, since we got wind of this in mid-January, and since that time, we have been contacting the comptroller. The feedback I've gotten is public infrastructure is your approved cost. From the matrix, the guidelines and stuff, that I would love to get clarity. There are, yes, several pages. We know the bookkeeping. Ms. Qualls has got those.
I'm not aware of a requirement that it get approved by the state before it get issued to the developer. My understanding is that payment can go, provided we get the developers show us, hey, here's the infrastructural cost that we have. They've incurred some already that we're aware of. And once those are shown, we've got those records. Ms. Qualls does this with Board of Region. Now, there is a difference between what is the certification under Board of Region and under direct state appropriations. We can work around that. I'm not worried about that. I just want to make sure that we do it in accordance with what the guidelines are. I do have a call out to F&A to make sure that that very question is, we are, just to confirm, we are allowed to pay out, or do we have to go through, when you do a traditional development, you do pay applications where they come in, they do pay, they fill out a bunch of stuff. That's not our goal to do, but I want to confirm that we don't have to do anything like that. And I'll get that answer. Ms. Qualls has, she's got the book, she knows a lot of what is required, but I will get that answer for you. And my expectation is they come back and say, as long as you all get evidence from the developer reflecting these costs related to what we're coining as public infrastructure, we're satisfied, we're good, and that way we don't have to worry about, the state coming back later. With that said, we've seen it from the Board of Region audit that, we're doing a 15 through 17 right now, so we've seen it. We're going to get on the front end of that so that we have the answer. The difference between this and the Board of Region is Board of Region was legislation passed in 2010, very fast. Here we have established history of procedures, requirements, guidelines of what Department of F&A is going to require. So I feel like getting the answer is not going to be onerous. I just want to get that answer.
And there's also a clear definition of what's reimbursable in this legislation versus Board of Region legislation, which is a little more open, as we all know, on that.
Yeah.
And which can be challenging. And I don't believe the state's going to be a clearinghouse by no means. They don't want to be for Board of Region. It's highly unlikely. And as part of this, I believe it's in here as a 1%. If we were to get awarded the $13 million, there's a $130,000 administration fee that is allocated to the city for administrative cost. So
is there any liability to the city if there's any penalties or anything?
Um,
Not that you're going to get any, I'm sure.
Right. Look, that's a great question. Yes, they have. We know they have performed. We've seen it for you're going on year 2.5 to 3. The short answer is I don't know. I have a call out to find out because the only concern is the money gets funneled through the city. If the city is, regardless of how they are the fiduciary on behalf of the state, which I do think we are, then the question is how does the liability flow? We recognize that, Mr. Custer said we can get Sterling as a party to the agreement. We'll structure it to where the payouts go to the Star Community builders. We can structure it a couple ways. If Sterling guarantees that it will be, a responsible party in the event that the city has any penalties or any payback obligations from the state. I'm not aware right now as to what, if any, liabilities the city would have, but any agreement we have would provide protections for the city that it would then turn around and say, if we are, the city's liable, we would look to the developer, and there's ways you can do that. You can do it through guarantees, you can do it through a bond. The developer can do a bond if he wants to. That developer would then, you only look to the bond if there's only in the event that the city is on the hook for something. That's an answer I hope to get. I just have not gotten that yet.
Well, the other thing I noticed is when I started reading the grant, it's got Sterling Holdings LLC and Star Community Buildings LLC, but in the next copy I got, they've taken out Sterling Holdings, haven't they?
Right, but I think we got that cured. I talked
Yes,
to Mr. Custer. We'll go ahead. I'm going to fix
that,
that.
no, that's fine. I sent Mark back. So this was Mark's agreement, the original one. There was 2 changes, and the reason why I brought that up earlier was about putting Sterling Holdings on there. Mark and I talked about it. That was the agreement that he had started with. We had removed that portion through the debate process for the simple fact of payment process, because one's the owner, one's the developer. We're fine with them both being on there as long as it's clear that when Star Community writes the check for the next $30 million worth of infrastructure, that Star Community is the one that gets paid back, not Sterling Holdings.
So on this part here, where I go back to page 8, that's got the A, B, and C, we're going to have better benchmarks than just the 50% of the grant funds to the developer?
I don't anticipate that, no.
Oh, you don't anticipate better benchmarks?
I don't.
So that, well, you want to explain that a little bit to us, what that
Yeah,
means?
so there's still work to be done, obviously. There's work that's been done, and there, with any other grant that, that's available to even to the city. So right now, you go out and you hire engineers, and there's costs, and you do all this stuff up front to get things done. If the grant allows a payback, we will utilize that. If the grant does not allow a payback, we won't utilize that, so then that percentage will shift somewhat. But we can only get paid back based on what we submit as actual cost. That's an auditable cost. So I can't just come in and say, hey, you got to write me a check. I mean, it's actually auditable cost.
I didn't know if you had like a timeline of how you expected to, what.
We
to have
honestly,
done.
we hope it's very rapid.
Thank you.
The sooner the better, right? The timeline for the whole document's 3 years. So that's 2 years shorter than what we were anticipating, so we need to hurry, and plus, we all know that 2027 is upon us, so.
I guess the only thing that I'm concerned about is most of these other grants went to the government, and this one is going to a private entity. And I just want to make sure that we understand what the city's required to do.
Absolutely, and this will give us time to answer the question on that paragraph. We'll get with Mr. Cut. We'll see what we can do to flush that out to get clarity. My expectation is when we've seen this, there is a significant amount of improvement. You've got wastewater, storm drainage, obviously from the state, and we know that there are sewers there. We know there's electricity utilities that have run to the. I'll get with Mr. Custer. We can get an identification of what those costs are, which may allow us to sort of play with 6A, B, and C to achieve what we understand the developer is looking to get, but we all know that it's done and what we're feeling very comfortable with, their reflected cost. I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think we can get
I don't
there.
think it is either. I don't want to make it so specific and complicated, because this method has been used once before when the city spent $4 million of their own money to incentivize a developer. So I want to make sure that we're kind of following the same sort of procedure, that if we're going to do this, then we're going to do it all, that we're all above board and on this, make sure everything's auditable, because I don't want anybody to come back on y'all, and I definitely don't want it to come back on us. So we all want to make sure that we're on the same page.
If I may add, Jeff Sykes, Ace Engineering, 714 Cherry Street. So we've identified about $33 million in cost in phase one that qualify. So identifying, what the grant would be pretty easy, I think. So there's a great deal of cost in phase one that would qualify. So it'd be pretty easy to identify that.
Especially since it's defined by statute.
Well, I wasn't here when you gave that $4 million, but I did work on the Volkswagen project, and it had benchmarks where they hit it, then the state gave them money and stuff like that. So that's why I was just curious if we had better benchmarks that maybe I could understand better.
I understand.
What I'll do, Councilwoman, is I'll get with Mr. Custer. Mr. Sykes has just volunteered himself to get to meet with me as well. We'll get it figured out. All right, we will.
We work on this project together, so.
We will get it. I agree. We can get some clarity on that. And really with what Mr. Sykes just said there, that we will be able to have sort of, we're not going to make it onerous, but we'll be able to have that identification of what those costs are. This is a little different from the border region certifying, basically, because the border region definition is, this long. It's all income. This is public infrastructure. I still think we'll get there. I'm not worried about it. It is a little different animal, but we're going to be able to do it, particularly now with what I've heard here. We will come back to you with clarity that achieves what we understand the developer is really seeking, because the goal of this is to keep the project timely moving. It's already doing a good job of getting to where it is in the 2.5, 3 years it is. To have the ability to get immediate funding on cost previously incurred goes a long way to assisting a developer that's going through additional funding, traditional lending, to get it. So I recognize what the developer's doing to satisfy concerns, and I've heard a lot of questions on this, coupled with concerns with the state, we'll get those answers for you and get clarity on that, to satisfy also the concerns of the developer.
Well, I would like to commend them because it was just given to you recently on how much you've done to work with them. So thank you. Thank you, and Brian and Mark, and the city manager.
Any other questions?
One other quick thing. You mentioned or both y'all mentioned the 4 million, but that was done under border region, the way that was set up. But that's still, that 4 million wasn't all given out at once. It was given out,
In
I think,
benchmarks.
as you said, similarly, based upon the completion of certain benchmarks as we went along.
I think that language was probably eerily familiar.
Yeah. No, there were four
Just make sure
payouts.
that
But yeah, there was.
There were four
payouts.
payouts on the border region, the site, we'll call it site development incentive for Exit 1. And there were, and they had your benchmarks. They had to have a lease agreement with Bass Pro. They had to ensure 90 days thereafter to get the next funding that they weren't in violation of that. They had to have a LOI. Then they had to have the completion check. There were benchmarks and metrics there. One difference between that and this one is we sort of already have a lot of the stuff,
It's already started.
which is
Shovel's been in the
critical.
ground, right.
So that will, what I'm saying here, Councilwoman, is once we really get some of the financial information as to where these infrastructural costs were, we heard Mr. Sykes say that, we know of around 33-ish million. And of that, I think I heard him say, we can identify of that what portion of those were your public infrastructure. I think that gets us there, and I think we can all feel confident, and maybe even allows us to go to the state to say, look, we now know, there's no question of what these are. State, we're not, they may not give us pre-approval, but they may give us every assurances of, guys, that's exactly what we're looking for, move on, and we're great. I just haven't gotten that yet, but I think talking to Mr. Custer and Mr. Sykes, we can get that, and that'll be great help. As far as the cost going forward, I have no expectation to think it would be any different, because we'll know the system for bookkeeping, we'll know the system for submitting, if we're needed to, for verification. I may be more of a belt and suspenders that I like to at least consult the state to see if they're willing to give us at least some degree of assurances that we're good, so that we don't have what we have going on right now, the 15 through 17 audit, and here we are in 2022. And a lot of that we've got resolved. We just don't want that. And I think we're going to be fine. We've had sort of a blueprint with the border region, and we can use that to get this going very, very seamlessly.
Thank you, Mr. Custer.
I did have one question real quick. Will the developer be responsible for the ongoing maintenance of these infrastructures?
It could be into the individual utility, whoever owns the utility. Anytime you invest or build in a utility, it reverts back to the utility company. They become the owner.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Ms. Witt asked part of a question that I was needing answered. She asked who owns the property at Gateway. You gave the answer as Sterling Holdings.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Are they the one that went through the Board of Regions to get the Board of Regions money?
I believe
Sterling
actually both, is Sterling and Star or just Sterling?
Sterling.
Sterling.
Okay. So now, everything in this agreement says developer, does not mention Sterling's. Okay. So if the developer turns in a request for reimbursement on infrastructure only that is down there now, how much of that infrastructure has already been turned in for the border region reimbursement?
Well, I don't want to speak from an accounting standpoint, but I'm pretty sure that you can't turn in for the same cost twice, whether it's with a different grant or a different funding source anyway. I don't see how the state would allow that to happen.
Okay.
Now, I'm curious too, when we do this grant, is it retroactive back, or does it start from the time that the grant is approved?
So, I guess that's really what I'm going to try to find out also, and if I understand it right, is the costs they've already incurred, can the grant funds that we receive them tomorrow, can a portion of those, what's being proposed here is of land acquisition and site improvements under the what's proposed here under 6A, they would get 50% that would be a reimbursement for cost already incurred, but are public infrastructure cost. I'm not aware of a restriction on it, but I'm going to get that answer from the Department of F&A. Our argument to the state would be, don't penalize the developer because they've already incurred the cost and not let them use it as a form of reimbursement, because the distinction, Mr. Custer's right, the distinction is we've got a development that's 3 years, 2.5, 3 years already kicked off. You have not seen that in Chattanooga. You have not seen that in the Knoxville. And we're using that as an argument as to why, one, we should be entitled to, we should be entitled to the amount that we're requesting, because we're showing a degree of commitment that's not been seen in other developments. Coupled with, you've also got costs that can be verified cost already. So you've removed that specter of whether or not the funds will even be used for the particular use of what they're represented. We have every expectation, Mr. Martinez, well, the developer will do that, but we already have $33 million, not all of which is public infrastructure, but even if it's a third of it, you've already got somewhere a good amount of banked expenses that are verifiable for public infrastructure expenses, improvements. And so that's a very long way of saying we're going to get the answer, but we're going to argue that, if it can be verified, what difference does it make? Reward the developer for showing the commitment early.
And even after the application period, even if we're awarded, it's not funded till July.
That's right, yeah.
So it's not like it gets funded next week. We submit this, it gets funded next week, and then we come asking for checks. So it's at least past July before the city would receive the funds. Then it goes into an account, and then the IDB and all that. So.
And I did talk to Ms. Watson about this today, and she even said that's a good point. The budget doesn't come effective until July 1st. And so it's one of the last things that the legislature will vote on is to approve the budget as amended by what was presented February 1st up until the time of the voting. We'll have a period of time between that to get these answers. And so we don't have to rush tomorrow to get them, but we will get these answers because we do want to get a development agreement, preferably next council meeting to get this development agreement honed in, satisfied in a manner that both parties feel like they're adequately protected. You do have the potential lender scenario that we've talked about for the city to be properly protected in the event that the state comes back and says, hold on, funds were expended on costs not approved or shouldn't have been. City, you owe the money. We'll have adequate protections in it to make sure that we can go to developers and say, hey, we got a claw back from you what we received. And I've been receiving assurances that they don't have a problem with that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Since we've established that Sterling Holdings owns this, okay. It says down here in this first payout, the developer can ask for 50% after land acquisition, so he's going to have to buy it from Sterling. Star Community is going to have to buy it from Sterling.
This has gone back through real quick iterations between Mr. Custer and me. Mr. Martino's attorney has all looked at it. I think if I had to say, when Sterling was removed back on Monday, it's now being brought back in. So I think the question that you have can be resolved. I think I said at the beginning, we're going to refer just in the singular, the developer, for purposes of simplifying this. I said at the opening that Star and Sterling would be referred to in the singular as developer. Sterling's going to be a part of this agreement now. And therefore, to the extent there's any ownership, we're going to have that cured because Sterling's going to be back into the agreement. Does that answer the question, Councilman?
Yep, I just don't see Sterling back here on a
Correct.
sign-off sheet to where they're going to be responsible for anything. So.
Yours was printed prior to our latest discussion of putting everything back in there the way Mark sent it originally.
So it's still a draft.
Yes, this it says draft in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this says draft.
Right.
I've got the one I got last week, or
Correct.
so
So the one you have last week?
it's different from this one.
Yes, it is. But the one you have from last week is the correct one.
This one's the correct one.
From a,
From a conversational standpoint today.
well, yes, from a inclusion of Sterling.
Yes.
It's current. There are other things we're going to address, hammer out, and get done. Councilwoman Witt has asked some stuff today. We'll go back and finalize some stuff, but to the extent that it's what you had earlier, when you and I met, it had Sterling. Earlier this week, it did have Sterling. When we got it back, Sterling was removed for accounting purposes. They're saying, hey, let's put Sterling back in. That would be a party that would be willing to guarantee performance, but any payments that are issued by the city need to be paid to Star Community Builders, because that's the entity incurring the cost of the improvements. And it's just, it's really a bookkeeping on the payout. They incur the cost, they get reimbursed by state funding, and it's not, you don't have Sterling getting funding on their books and no expenses to reflect those costs. What they're trying to do, and understandably, is Star Builders is trying basically to have a zero net on their books. They have an expense on one end, but they're receiving funding on the other end, so it's a net wash. Versus if you have Sterling, who receives an influx of capital, that could potentially be taxed as revenue, but they don't want that to be taxed as revenue, and I don't blame them. I wouldn't either. And so my guess is that's the reason of it.
And I think that some of this is probably confusing because right now we're talking about the application part, which is very simplified from all the stuff that we're talking about. What we're talking about now on the development agreement should have been the unnumbered resolution, which is something completely different. The request is the easy part, allowing the mayor to make the request with hopes that we get it. The rest of it we have to work out in fine detail, which.
Any other questions?
So we're voting on just to do the application, and then we'll hammer everything else out after this.
Correct, Councilwoman, yes. So the application is an online portal. It's got 19 fields. Mr. Custer has already seen this. He and his team have worked on the information that needs to be imputed into those 19 fields. We're actually going to do it tonight. We're going to stay late and do it because the deadline's tomorrow at 12. I don't want to take a chance of internet downs, computer. I'm just not taking a chance. I want it in tonight to put our placeholder, and then we're confirmed, secured in our application, timely filing, and then we've still got homework to do from there. I don't know when the state will make a decision. My guess is sometime in March, maybe April, by the time they really get to hammering out the details. And as we get information, we'll keep you posted.
Anything else?
Our preference is to hammer out the development agreement and put it for a vote, too.
All right.
So we're voting tonight to give permission to apply for it. Then we're coming back 2 weeks to vote on the agreement.
Well, tonight is for the application. I'll work with Mr. Custer and his team to try to get the agreement in by in 2 weeks.
That would be the expectation.
I'll have it ready tomorrow.
Awesome. Anything else? I will say, I don't have a question, but I will say that I've always been excited about this development. This is the greatest thing that we've seen at East Ridge. It's the most, the largest investment. We're seeing that come to fruition already, even without this grant. So I think this is just another tool that we can get some state funding to help enhance this amazing gateway project in our city and even the region.
Absolutely.
It's going to benefit the entire region. So with no other questions, roll call, Ms. Middleton.
Vice Mayor Chauncey.
Yes.
Councilmember Cagle.
Yes.
Councilmember Helton.
Yes.
Councilmember Witt.
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Yes. Resolution 3238 passed.
Let me ask one question, Mark. Will the development agreement be a resolution or ordinance?
It's a resolution.
And will it go through the IDB first or second?
Well, that's a good question. That was asked in some of the discussions. IDB meets on the third Thursday, which, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be this coming Thursday. So I have consulted with Chairwoman Brawley to let her know this is coming down. I have not talked to her today. As a best practice, stay consistent. IDB can approve it, and then it comes to council in 2 weeks. So if we can get it done, hammer this out in the next week, great. Get an IDB meeting and then have it come to council the following week, whatever those dates are.
Okay, so it'd be IDB on the 17th? IDB on the 17th, say third Thursday? That's the 17th, the week from today, and then the week after that would be our regular council meeting.
Perfect. Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to item H, approve of design and facade materials for District A and B package stores.
Thank you, Mayor. We have both representatives of both of the liquor package stores that are being built in the city of East Ridge. We've asked them to come forward today, and I'll do a alphabetical order, so I'll start with Harsh Patel or his representative to talk about the design, the site plan, and the facade, and the materials to be used for the facade as per the ordinance.
My name's Nassar Gonsalia, 7333 Majestic Hill Drive, Chattanooga, Tennessee. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Harsh Patel. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen the site. We are in the process of, we already broke ground, so we're in the process of building. The site, I mean, it's pretty straightforward building. Most of you have seen the building design already. We are conforming with a modern look, stucco ephes on the outside. It's going to have solar panels on the top. It's going to be two sides with glass, so people can see it from Ringgold Road and partly from John Ross Road. In your packets, you have exterior design schedules is included. If you have questions regarding that, I can address that. I didn't include the entire site plan because it was 65 pages long, so, but I have a copy of it if you guys need it.
So I'll ask the city manager here. So these site design plans have been reviewed by our building officials and all are good?
Yes, they've gone through the building officials, and I'll ask Mr. Ritchie, he can comment on the exterior finish. This one I think is similar to the other one. Talk a little bit about the exterior finish that's going to be.
Okay, so the exterior finish from the Ringgold side up, I mean, we have a standard ephes design, so which is stucco. Most of the front side of the building is going to be top to bottom glass, and the top side of it would be stucco, and the same thing on the Save-A-Lot side as well. So two sides, it's glass.
So those both meet the intent. I mean, you can see clean through, and that's one of the things in the ordinance about windows, and then stucco is actually a approved item for facade.
It is going to be an energy efficient building, so we have air curtains in the entry points, and the glasses are double paned. We're going to put solar panels on the top to factor in for 60% of the energy cost.
Okay. All right. So I was just conferring with the city attorney if we needed to get a formal motion, a second, and a vote on the approval of this.
You know, the
design.
ordinance requires that, they get approval by the council. So as our consistent practice is, we vote and we put it in a form to always memorialize it by resolution. So while we don't have the resolution drafted, we can get that. But the short answer is yes. I want y'all to vote. Yes. I recommend you doing that.
I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the design and facade material for the Ringgold Wine and Spirit location, which is District A?
They're A.
Okay.
A.
make a motion to approve this for District A.
Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Witt and a second by Vice Mayor Chauncey. Do we have any discussion?
Yeah, are these designs, are they going to go down on record as exactly the way they are, exactly the way they're presented to us? Square footage? I guess we're approving of something, so
You're approving the design of the building and the exterior
Schedules, exterior
construction.
schedules based
I
on
can't
your
say there
ordinance.
might not
yeah.
be some adjustment for some unforeseen
Yes.
circumstance, so
Yes.
it may not be totally exact.
okay.
I mean, they have been submitted to the building official, so they review that.
How are we going to, I guess, verify the square footage of the retail space once it's all constructed? Are we going to have a commercial appraiser go in and measure everything out? And
No, to be on the plans of the area that's square footage for retail.
Well, again, yeah, I agree. They're on the plans here, but this is not what really happens when it's all said down on the site. So
Well, you already have your minimum. You have your minimum, and as long as he's way above that, you're fine.
Once we apply for a letter for occupancy, building inspectors have to come in and, yeah.
It goes straight through the permitting process,
Permitting process,
and
yeah.
they have to meet all standards in the ordinances y'all set forth.
I guess I'm just trying to, there's got to be a verification process at some point that we go in and we, not me, but city codes or like an appraiser, somebody goes in and measures the square footage and says, okay, we're, you know,
That is part of the process in a building final is how aisles are laid out and everything, and square footage is met, so.
So, and I don't put words in your mouth, so that occurs before they get the CO?
Absolutely.
Certificate of occupancy, okay.
is this one going to be 8,400
Yes.
square foot of
Yes.
retail space?
No, 5,800, it's, the total building size is 8,400, so floor space is 5,800 square feet, and the
800 of retail space.
floor space. So it doesn't include the storage space that was required by the ordinance and cooler areas, discounting that.
But what was the actual retail space on this?
The requirement was 4,500 square feet, we're at 5,800.
Requirements 4,500.
Minimum.
We're doing
We're doing a
5,800
bigger building
of
than.
retail space.
Yes.
Okay.
So the difference between the 5,800 and the 8,400 is the refrigeration, the storage,
Yes.
office.
It doesn't
maybe
include restrooms and,
stuff
you
like
know,
that.
not anywhere, we're not selling material.
That's all I have.
Sir, any other questions? I see none. Roll call, Ms. Middleton.
Could we go ahead and give that a resolution number?
Sure. Do we know what that is?
All right, so we'll read a caption that we're basically, but this would be a resolution number 3238, approving the design of facade materials for District 8 packaged liquor store.
39.
3239.
39.
Ah, yeah, of course, yeah. Excuse me.
Are we good now, Ms. Middleton? You're good now? Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Chauncey,
Yes.
Councilmember Cagle,
Yes.
Councilmember Helton, Councilmember Witt,
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'll ask the other liquor store owner to come down. Mr. Suhaj Patel, please.
Do you have?
Yes, and I have one thing that he's handed out. You may have something else, but he handed.
Hi, my name is Suhaj Patel. I'm representing JPP Properties.
One more. Unless you're passing them down. Okay.
Okay.
I got an extra copy if you.
All right.
Go ahead, Mr. Patel.
So I have here in front of you the exterior of what the liquor store at the corner of Spring Creek and Ringo Road is going to look like. This is a family of the stone stucco ephes product. It is more premium in quality, and it is more energy efficient, moisture proof, as well as it helps with the drying. So when the rain hits the surface, it does not absorb into the actual material. It is made with the same materials as stone stucco, EIFS, fiber cement. I do have samples here if anyone wishes to look at those. And then I do have data sheets on them that, explaining in detail what it is. Reason for our use on this is a more modern look for the city of East Ridge as you come off the interstate. It's not going to be your ordinary stone stucco brick building, but it still meets the family of that.
You met with Mr. Ritchie, correct?
Yes, we've submitted our plans to the city for permitting. We've met with them, made sure that we do meet all international building code as well as city ordinances and required codes in regards to the construction of this project. Plans have been approved, and we are about, our bank appraisers just came by the other day, we are 47% complete on the project.
Any comments, Mr. Ritchie?
So the only comment I have is, so he's wanting to use a fiber cement structural panel. It's stucco. It's just the new and improved stucco. It's not actually worded in our ordinance, but it is far superior to stucco.
The cost of it is a little bit more expensive than stucco, but we are wanting to use it, one, for the additional look, premium look, and two, for the energy efficiency of how it's going to perform on the building and our HVAC system.
All right. I would assume this would be Resolution 3240. Okay. I'll entertain a motion for Resolution 3240 for the approval of the design and facade materials for District B.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion approved by Vice Mayor Chauncey and a second by Councilmember Witt. Do we have any discussion? I see none. Roll call, Ms. Middleton.
Vice Mayor Chauncey.
Yes.
Councilmember Cagle.
Yes.
Councilmember Helton. Councilmember Witt.
Yes.
Mayor Williams.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That is all of the items we have on the agenda tonight. So we'll move to item E, which is discussion of the tentative agenda items for February 24th council meeting. Under old business, we will not have ordinance number 1152, that was denied. So we'll have a public hearing for ordinance number 1156, to rezone properties of 930, 931 Hurst Street, 1000 and 1004 Floyd Drive, 6517 McCall Road, and 1403 Mac Smith Road. Followed by the ordinance for that public hearing. Ordinance of the City Council of the City of East Ridge, Tennessee, to amend the zoning regulations and the zoning map for the City of East Ridge, Tennessee, so as to rezone the property located at 930 and 931 Hurst Street, 1000, 1004 Floyd Drive, 6517 McCall Road, and 1403 Mac Smith Road from R2 Residential Duplex District, C1 Commercial District, and O2 Hospital and Institutional District to C4 Planned Commercial Center District. This would be the second and final reading. Any discussion, council? See none. The next item would be a public hearing for ordinance number 1157. That's the abandonment dead-end portion of Hurst Street. The ordinance would follow. Ordinance number 1157, the ordinance of the City Council of the City of East Ridge, Tennessee, closing and abandoning a portion of the right-of-way located at 900 block of Hurst Street, a portion of the tax map number 169E-C-001, 169E-D-007, and 169E-D-007.01, as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions. That would be second and final reading. Any discussion, council? The next item would be public hearing for ordinance number 1158, the rezoning of 495 Camp Jordan Parkway. Following that's the ordinance 1158, ordinance to the City Council of the City of East Ridge, Tennessee, to amend the zoning regulations and the zoning map of the City of East Ridge, Tennessee, so as to rezone the property located at 495 Camp Jordan Parkway, tax map 170I-A-037.09 from C1 Commercial District to O2 Hospital and Institutional District. That would be second and final reading. Any discussion? Council? I see none. The next item will be ordinance number 1159, ordinance to amend Title IV of the East Ridge Municipal Code pertaining to the municipal personnel. That would be second and final reading. Any discussion, council? See none. Under new business, there'd be an unnumbered resolution to adopt the Human Resource Manual. Anything you'd like to add?
I believe Ms. Senegalio basically touched all on it.
I did. Just a reminder that you all have access to a copy. It's been in your box. I believe you've all picked it up by now. And I will update those copies, and I'm also available for the next 2 weeks. If anyone wants to sit down and go through anything or ask questions specifically, spend some time on it, I'll be
Did you get
available.
those updated? Will you notify us that they're in our box?
Oh, sure.
Thank you so much. Any questions, council? That is all that I see. However, I believe we will have another item
Well,
for
that's the hope.
resolution.
Talk about for the development agreement?
development agreement?
That's the hope.
Yes,
And,
that's the hope.
We will, the intent is to try to get the remaining items.
Go ahead.
I'm just saying that the intent is to get the remaining items on the development agreement addressed based upon the comments I've heard here and have that before the council at the next meeting.
Awesome. Council, any other business? I see none. Thanks, everyone, for attending, and I hope everyone has a happy